Pip pip. Pip pip. Pip pip. Pip pip. Yes, I too am really excited. Let's do it.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan, and welcome to another episode of Third Degree, the podcast. Hi, I'm Peter, and looky here, it's my good English friend, Dan Crook. Tally-ho, Dan.
Pip pip.
I think
I'm calling in from somewhere where pip pip is an actual phrase.
Wait a second. Did I use tally-ho incorrectly there? Is tally-ho a something you say when you're wishing somebody goodbye?
I mean, it's not a real thing.
Oh, it's not.
Not that anyone...
It's not like, what's up? Or anything like
Is it like put a shrimp on the Barbie?
No, that means put a shrimp on a grill.
Wait, then what does pip pip mean?
I mean, it's again one of those taking the piss out of old toffs kind of deal.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like I know nothing more about either two of those phrases than I did 30 seconds ago.
It's okay. There's enough people that say things like British accent that make no sense, so I'm used to it all by now.
All right. Well, pip pip to you.
Bollocks.
Founder and co-editor of thirddegree.net and from the Dallas Morning News, Buzz Carrick. Hello, Buzzard.
Hello, everybody. Calling in today from Globe Life Park in Arlington, Texas, watching the dirt get moved around. Pip, pip.
We'll talk about Globe Life Park and the great mystery that I find about that here a little bit later in the pod. But we will start off by me eating a giant slice of crow pie. And that would be our good friend Zobra, Mr. Andrezic, who proceeded to get a call-up for the very first time at the ripe old age of 30 to the Czech Republic for European qualifiers, games that actually mean something. Came on as a substitute against England. This has all happened since the last time we talked, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And proceeded to not just play, but score the winning goal against England, who lost for qualifiers for the first time in like 10 years. And then he went on to play in the next game against who?
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland, and produced...
Who are now better than England.
Who produced 2 assists in a 3-2 loss. And by all means... all the promises and hype around Cobra have suddenly now blossomed into truth. And Buzz, will any of that carry over into the much more important FC Dallas game against Seattle on Saturday?
No, but that doesn't change the fact that he had a great weekend. I mean, the Northern Ireland game was just a friendly, but to come on and get 2 assists for him, that's pretty good. I mean, he's better at build play, but he's not particularly a great passer, but he is getting really good at sort of that layoff pass, and that's really nice to see. If you're talking about, what can he do that can help this team? The goal they scored against England was the kind of goal he always scores, which is he ran to the right place and nobody marked him and he knocked it in. So, but when we get to the part about where we actually predict the lineup for this weekend, there's a reason why the answer is no, it will not carry over this weekend.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with that. But I do. Here's the thing. How do we even explain this weird switch of a flip in terms of his form? Because I've caught a lot of flack, rightfully so, for dogpiling and describing him as having a giant bag of nothing. But I'm not exaggerating, Buzz, when I say he wasn't even like Christian Coman bad. He was just like, you went out and watched him at practice and went, this guy isn't MLS quality.
No, that's correct. In the spring, it's not like it was a short window either. It was spring training. It was the first 6 months of the season. He was not doing anything in practice that made you think that this guy was going to be able to produce like he is. It's not like he banged in those kind of goals in training and then just didn't get a chance to play. He wasn't scoring at this level. He would get opportunities and he would blow them. He still is not fast. He doesn't have a burst to get between players. He can't separate and create his own shot. He's not going to play tight little ticky-tacky combos. He doesn't necessarily play build-up play like Lucci wants. At least for 6 months he didn't. So both he and Lucci have been very clear that after a certain amount of time, and by the way, full credit to him for never giving up. Full credit to Lucci for not giving up on him like we all did. And I certainly had given up on him and they didn't, and Lucci didn't. And finally, after 6 months or so, Cobra did two things that Lucci asked him to do. One was high press better, get his timing right and his team concept right in the high press and do it right. And the other was that play where he checks back and does those little playoff build-up that help the build-up. So he did those two things. And once he did, Lucci said, okay, now I can play you again. Now you've earned an opportunity to play because you're doing these two things I've asked you to do. And that's when he got the opportunity against Montreal. Now, since then, he's on fire because his attitude is great and he banged in a couple of goals and his attitude, his demeanor has changed because he now has confidence, because he now believes in himself more than he did before, because the team now believes in him. Excuse me a second. Now, when you watch him in training, he does bang those goals in. He's almost doubled the amount of goals he scores in training. And believe me, he was not doing any of this before. He's much, much better now. And when you watch him train now, you can say, there's a guy that I can get a use out of. And that's what the coaches think too. But you have to remember too, this is a 7-game stretch. 8 games for FC Dallas, 7 games he played in. That's not even 1/4 of a season. So before we all decide this guy's the answer to all of our problems, we don't know that yet, right? He's taken himself from he won't be here next year to now he's going to be a piece of the part of the puzzle. He's going to be part of the plan, and we'll see how it goes going forward. And if he continues to produce like this, fantastic. Then he is the answer to all your, at least your goal scoring problems. But you don't know. Like I said, it's just 7 games, and we hope it continues, and we hope he continues to do well. But the turnaround is a complete night and day. He was doing nothing like he's doing now in training.
Dan, can you think of anybody in your lifetime who has made such a conversion from everybody going, okay, he's a bust, to getting everybody super excited about their performances in this same manner?
I mean, there was Mauro Diaz and Fabian Castillo right here. Like Bud said, he's done those two things very well now. Take his goal against England. That starts because he gets high, he presses the keeper, and he pressing him into a mistake. From there, he drops back, looking for a pass, doesn't receive it, gets into the box, takes 2 steps back off the marker, and he's got a very simple finish from there. I just really want to see him do more. The goals are fantastic. FC Dallas has had a problem with strikers scoring goals, but he hasn't done it on the road. He hasn't. There's an issue with quantity. I mean, he's got the quality getting there. He's putting his chances away, but I think he's only had 2 shots on target in away games in this spell. And we talk about that spell started with a goal. LA, he didn't have a shot of any variety at all. Chicago, he blasts one from 30 yards out and the keeper makes an easy save. That's all he does in the game. Even looking at the international call-up he just had, they were at home. The second game, the 2 assists are great, but he had 1 header which he blazed over from 12 yards out, and that was really about it statistically for him in the game.
Yeah, that's kind of my question to both of you is how much of this is like legitimate excitement that he's actually coming good, and how much of this is kind of not really seeing it for what it is because you're just so excited to see this guy score, and you get to rub it in the face of people like me who have been crapping on him for the last 6 months. And the reason why I say this is even in the games for Dallas, that he's scored in. And even in the videos, the all-touch videos from his 2 appearances with the Czech Republic, absent those 2 or 3 really good moments, the rest of his engagement in the game goes back to a lot of what we saw prior to this kind of run of goal scoring, which was poor touch, not very good passing, kind of awkward positioning, lack of speed. All those things that we criticized him for are all still there. And I just wonder if we're all getting super excited about something that's very temporary and could be snuffed out very quickly in another goal scoring slump.
Well, the thing I say about him lately when people have asked me is that in every single phase of the game, Christian Coleman is a better player, except that Coleman doesn't score and Andresic does. You know,
so what you're saying, Buzz, is if we could take that part of Cobra's game and the rest of Coleman's game and have them have a baby, we'd have
that baby. That baby would be worth $20 to $30 million and be playing for Newcastle. So the point I'm getting to is that no, there are a lot of flaws in his game. That's why he's in Major League Soccer. But this team is so desperately and so badly needed a number 9 who could finish and get balls into the goal, and he's doing that. This is the thing we've been asking for. I mean, listen, we asked for something better than this. We asked for Chicharito, but we're not going to get that. You know, we're not going to get Funes Mori. We're not going to get the complete player. So this is what we have here in FC Dallas, is a guy who gets in the right position and knocks it in. So that can be an important component of what you're doing going forward. It can be part of your team. It can be part of what you're doing. Those are all good things. But it's not going to be a superstar Carlos Vela, 30 goals, 30 assists, whatever he just did. You know what I mean? He's not that guy. So right now, it's a good component, a good piece. I'm excited for him. Couldn't be happier for the guy. He's a great dude. He'll be part of the program going forwards. But, you know, he's not worth $30 million. He's not going to lead the league. And, well, maybe he could lead the league. Go ahead.
So here's my rationale on it, right? You know, people are getting really excited. Cobra's on fire. And, yeah, at home, 6-4 games is a great sample size, great small sample size. But it's kind of more the norm for other strikers, right? You look at the top scorers in the league, and I'd mentioned this to you before we started. If you ranked all the top scorers of every team, FC Dallas is tied for 22nd. Only Cincinnati had a player who finished top scorer for their team and had less goals, and that was only 1.
So the top scorer for Dallas is Jesus, correct?
Yeah, with 8 goals.
With 8 goals. And so he is the second lowest top scorer across all MLS teams.
Tied second lowest with Vancouver, but yeah.
Wow.
But you know, when that's the norm, and that has been the norm for a few years. I mean, remember everyone was talking about Maxi Urruti like he was a world beater when he was, you know, taking 17 shots a goal or something crazy. You know, a player puts a small run together, and you're like, oh my god, we've got a world beater. When, you know, your top 10, 12 teams in MLS are like, this is totally normal. What are you talking about?
Well, it was funny. I had this question. I think I asked you this, Buzz, or asked somebody this question of the day, is what would have happened, or maybe this happens in the offseason, if Christian Coleman suddenly has his own kind of like rising from the phoenix kind of moment, and now suddenly you've got Christian Coleman and Andresic both scoring goals, and what do you do as a coach then? And I don't know. That's all fantasy and whatever. What's interesting to me is that if we all are in agreement that, you know, the odds are is that as good as this run of goal scoring has been, he's probably not really the complete number 9 the team really ultimately needs. He's on a multi-year deal, getting paid at least $500,000. It's probably going to be more than that next year, based on how these deals tend to go. And if that's the case, that makes him easily a top 5 salary chewer on this team. And aren't we really ready for this team to have guys who are getting paid that much that are regular starters and producers?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is like if he could do this over a whole season, you'd be talking about a 30, 35 goal season. That would be truly remarkable. But the odds of that happening are low. But it is correct that we would all like a player that was the complete package. But that's why I think that he'll be a big part of the solutions next year, in the sense that, you know, FC Dallas is not going to pay the $10-20 million it takes to get a guy that is the complete package and does have all the answers. They're going to do it sort of in a more budgety kind of way. And if this guy's one of your options and you know he's going to be good at home for you,
a budgety kind of way.
yeah, but if you can use him in games where it's going to be kind of a banger, where it's not going to be a track meet, you can use him in games where he's not going to need to play like an over the top kind of verticality. FC Dallas builds slow anyway. If they continue to do better getting balls into the box, he's going to be a very functional player. And this 7 goals in 7 games will extrapolate to a higher number. He may not start 34 games next year, but he's going to be a bigger part of the plan. They'll try and bring somebody else in as a 9-2, but you don't go with all your eggs in one basket. They'll keep Cobra and they'll get somebody else, and they'll try and bring Pepe along. But Pepe's a couple of seasons away from being the guy, so he'll be part of the plan. It's not a team that's going to have Carlos Vela. They're going to have Cobras. So that's what we got, and he'll be here, and it'll be fun to watch on some level.
All right. Well, all of the last 10 minutes of this conversation that we've had is somewhat ironic because I have a feeling, Buzz, you're going to predict that it's more than likely that Cobra doesn't start in the game in Seattle.
Yeah, I am going to predict that. And the reason I'm going to predict that, now understand that training was closed immediately this week, so a lot of times we make these predictions based on rotations we're watching, how things are working, what we think they're looking at. This week we're a little blind, but it was just a month ago, basically, that they went to Seattle and played with a tactic of Barrios at the 9. Now, over the course of a month, Seattle has not changed that much, and FC Dallas has not changed that much. These teams are basically the same 2 teams. So I feel that it's very likely that whatever Lucci believed a month ago was validated by the fact that they went up there and fought to that 0-0 tie, right? That was only the 3rd time they've ever gotten a point in Seattle ever. So why would you throw that away and go with the other option where you've gotten your butt stomped like 3-0 and 4-0 losses in the last month on the road, right? So to me, I'm very convinced that Lucci will go with the same sort of type of shape that he went with last time, which is Barrios as a 9, sort of that mid-block to low-block look, still pressing high, still trying to create turnovers, but with a little more of that counter-punchy look, trying to get Barrios free behind their defense. And if you follow through on that scenario, right, you end up with Santiago Mosquera at left wing because he's been playing really well. Ferrer as your 10, and now your right wing's open. What are you going to do on the right? Well, you can't play Andresic as a right wing. Not really. I mean, you could, I suppose, but that's not a good idea. Is Baji healthy? I have no idea. He's still listed as being out, but we can't watch training, so we don't know. Right? He could be back. So really, is Paxton Pomykal starting at right wing?
Well, he
Possibly?
did in the last game against Seattle.
I know, but last game against Seattle, they had other people healthy. Right, they had guys that were available, and like, was that the game they started Reynolds in the wing? I can't remember. That didn't go very well. So, maybe it's Pomykal, maybe it's Baji. Other than that, who could it be? Could it be Coleman? Could it be Jossie? I don't know. So I mean, for me, that's the big question mark now. Is if I'm right that they're going to go with Barrios at the 9 scenario, then who plays right wing? And that'll be the fun question to try and figure out, because the back 4 is the same. The midfield is Acosta, Cervania, and Ferreira. So all your questions are up front, and it's going to be interesting. But I just believe that nothing has changed in the last month that'll convince Lucci that he wasn't right last time, particularly since they got that tie. So
right.
That's what I think is going to happen.
You mentioned it, and I just want to throw this out here. Do you find it as annoying as I do that they decided to close training this week and almost a bit pointless?
Well, yeah, a little bit, obviously, because I'm a firm believer this club needs as much publicity as it can get, but most of the media that go to training don't really watch it. I'm kind of the only person that watches it and takes notes. Everybody else sort of just shows up with for 20 minutes left, stands in the corner, and then asks questions. And they still have the media availability. They still had that part. I just find it kind of weird that. I mean, I get it. Like, if you're trying to do something secret, like if they are trying to go with this Barrios version, it's like, but we're still all going to talk about it. Like if you've watched, like if you're the other team, like you're not looking at the way they played you the last time we were there. If you're Seattle, you're not going to play that tape like 8 times and like dissect it and like what did they do and anticipate what they're going to do. I don't know. It seems a little crazy to me. They're not the Cowboys. I never think they should trade. But this year they've closed training every Thursday and Friday all year. This is the first year they've ever done that. So different world, I guess. I don't know. I don't think they're the place that should close training. But it's not my team. So what can I do?
Yeah, it would be not my advice to disincentivize the local media to spend even less time covering your team. It just
It's not like It's not like I write out the team and put it on paper and go, here's the lineup. I mean, I don't do that anyway.
I know. It's your playoff week. If there was ever a reason for the local TV stations and the newspapers and the media to come and want to cover your team, it would be this week, because there are stories to be told, and to decide to close all of that. And because nobody's going to drive to Frisco just to go do media meet and greet after practice. They're just not going to do that.
Yeah, well, this whole year they've also not let you shoot training. You can shoot the first 15 minutes and the last 15 minutes, which is when they're stretching.
Yeah.
So you can shoot that part. And that's true the whole week long. There's a reason why I don't go on Friday either. I go on Wednesday because on Friday it's clear what the lineup is. And Wednesday I can talk about all kinds of stuff because you can't see the lineup unless you really know what you're doing in terms of dissecting how they run in practice. But, whatever. It's not my team. They still let me go at all sometimes, most of the time. So so I still go up there, but like I didn't go this week. There was no point for me to drive an hour each way to not be able to watch, so I didn't go.
No, you're a trooper. All right, so the other component about the game on Saturday that I think ultimately is going to be where the game is won and lost is in the middle of the field, and this is really going to be the situation where Acosta and Cervania are going to have to play out of their minds to give Dallas any hope, right?
Yeah, I think so. Acosta's going to need to be disciplined and stay at home and not get dragged out of the middle. That's when they get exposed right up the gut is when he gets pulled out of there.
Well, to me, it feels like, a side of formation and deciding to be very counterattack oriented and sit back in some sort of mid to low block. Those are the two guys that are really going to have to play out of their mind to keep Seattle at bay.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. And Savannah's going to have to be good in there. And, they're still going to build slow. They're just going to try and use, they're trying to exploit a little bit of that space right behind their defense with like those quick sort of cutting angle passes from the wings probably. So I think that'll be the key. If they can, I mean, in the end, they're probably going to try and grind it out and try and steal a goal late or take it to PKs, try and not let Seattle score basically. That's how you'll win it.
Dan, any particular aspect of the game that you feel is most important or you're looking most forward to seeing?
Don't give up an early goal. I mean, the last thing you want to do is give that Seattle crowd something to cheer about. I know, we talk about big crowds and stuff, and players always say, it's better to play in a big stadium. And, I think it's Michael Bradley always said the hardest games to play in an empty stadium, which is maybe part of why FC Dallas has a great home record. But yeah, the last thing you want to do is sort of see a completely energized Sounders with a goal up early, and players start getting flashbacks of Oscar starting 5 at the back, and being 3-0 down in a fraction of a second.
Yeah, I do wonder if Dallas got a bit of luck in the fact that Reggie didn't start in the game against Canada, but Jordan Morris and who's the other Seattle player? Oh, Roldan both played 90 minutes in that game. I think they both played 90 minutes in that game. So they'll have a little bit of mileage and wear and tear on them come up for Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. Reggie should come back sharp, hopefully. Yeah, he's been playing pretty fired up lately. Hopefully he can carry that forward. Although last time he came back from a camp, the first game back, he was terrible. That was Chicago. So hopefully we don't see a repeat of that.
Well,
but then he got better,
It does beg I do wonder, is there going to be any what's the word I'm looking for? Not layover. Side effects on Roldan and Morris, and the fact that the result against Canada was so embarrassing and so bad and so apathetic and all of the things that we want to yell and scream about. I just wonder, do they bounce back with an amazing performance? Are they both kind of mentally burned out from that? I'll be interested to see how they react in the game, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, hopefully it's burnout. for FC Dallas' sake.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Dallas in Seattle on Saturday. The game is at 2:30, and they've officially decided, after much consternation, the game will be broadcast on Fox Sports 1, not Fox Sports 11. At one point, it seemed like it was going to be buried somewhere in the deepest nether regions of the cable network, but it is now they've repositioned everything and will get onto Fox Sports 1 at 2:30 Central Time. And obviously, we'll be talking about it live on the radio show, which actually kicks off about 30 minutes before then. So we'll do a little pregame discussion of it as well. Any other aspect of this Seattle-Dallas game that you want to preview, Buzz or Dan?
Well, I think it's important to discuss the bench because the bench will affect the North Texas game. So, and I'll explain that here. You're taking Maurer, your backup goalkeeper for sure, right? You're whoever's not starting on the right wing will be on the bench. So Pomical's on the bench or Andresic's on the bench, one or the other. Ja'Cory Hayes has been in the 18 all the time lately. Bresson's been in the 18 all the time lately. Badji, if he's healthy, should be there. And that leaves you 2 spots available beyond that. Now, a lot of times lately, Johnny Nelson's been in there. And the time Pomical started, Edwin Cerrillo was in there. So that's pretty simple. But if Pomical's not starting, that probably kicks Cerrillo out. And the reason it's all important is because North Texas is playing for a championship the same night. And North Texas is going to, and the organization as a collective, wants to win a title. So how many of the guys that play for North Texas are they going to leave behind? And the big questions are Nelson and Reynolds and Cerrillo are the 3 that you wonder, do I leave them or do I take them as part of my bench? How much am I willing to sacrifice my bench for North Texas or not when I'm going to Seattle? I don't have an answer to that. I think it's a really interesting question, though.
But it's really weird that you're even bringing this up because I never, ever considered there would be a scenario where this club has to make choices about where to assign players and value one playoff game over another. And I have to assume that they will always put their best players and best option, whether they're going to play or not, on FC Dallas. But are you telling me there's a chance they may diminish the 18 for Seattle to bolster the team that's playing in the USL 1 final?
I'm telling you that I think it's worth talking about. Now, we don't know what they're going to do, and that's why it's an interesting question. Because North Texas is playing for a championship. On any other given game, I might agree with you.
Okay, so
you would never impact your bench.
But it's an MLS playoff game, Buzz. I mean, one is clearly way more important than the other. So name me a player that you would want to have on the bench as an emergency backup in Seattle, but you think also is almost necessary to start for Seattle. I mean, for North Texas to have a chance in their championship game. Well,
the 3 that I mentioned, Nelson, Reynolds, and Cerrillo, are the 3 that are jumping back and forth these days. You know, Nelson is your only left-sided player, basically, on the bench.
Wow.
Everybody else is a right-side or a central-sided player.
But you don't really think that they'll say, hey, we're going to leave 1, 2, or 3 of these guys back in Dallas for the championship game. Screw the MLS game.
No, I do.
Really?
Yeah, because it's a championship.
Okay. So
what are your odds of winning in Seattle?
Dan, do you agree with that line of thinking?
Not entirely. I would. I mean, it's a championship, but it's a development team at the same time.
Yeah, Buzz, I got to tell you, if I found out if that actually happened, and I found out that was the line of thinking, that would constitute treason in my mind. That would make absolutely zero sense in every way, shape, and form, and would really begin to make me question what the whole point of this thing is.
Well, you think that way, but we're not talking about you. We're talking about the Hunts.
I know, but like, what's the point of having an MLS team if you, for some reason, value winning a USL One championship over an opportunity to beat Seattle in Seattle by putting your best 18?
Well, if it's for player development, what's better for Cerrillo, Nelson, and Reynolds to go and sit on the bench and not play in Seattle, or to play for a championship for North Texas? Start and play 90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I think that being a part of a playoff game and that atmosphere at that stadium and that intensity, whether you play in the game or not, probably possesses more value than we realize.
Yeah. No, I'm a big believer in the road. One of the reasons I wanted FC Dallas to make the playoffs was because of the value of learning about road playoff games, atmosphere, and intensity. I agree with that. I'm not saying that I think they should do this. I'm just raising the question because I think it's an interesting question.
I think there's a
chance they do.
It's a fascinating question, and it boggles my mind that there may be a scenario in which they choose to leave 1, 2, or 3 key players behind so that they can play in a final versus you are applying a value of a USL One champion final against an MLS playoff game, and that the part to me in my brain after watching this team for 20 some odd years and desperately praying for an MLS Cup, to me there's nothing equal about those two things. They're not even close.
Well, remember, this is a team that we've talked about this. I'm convinced the Hunts have doubled down. Right? I even talked to Dan Hunt about it today. He agreed with me that they're even more convinced now because of this season than the kids. So it's like, wouldn't winning a North Texas title be able to think that Dan can hold up and say, look at us with our youth model?
Well, yeah. At that point, they will have won silverware across every spectrum of U.S. soccer ladder, with the exception of USL Pro and MLS Cup.
Yeah.
So you're the most kick-ass academy and low-level development club, but you're just kind of mediocre at everything else.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's ask the real question then. If you don't take, if Nelson, Reynolds, and Cerrillo don't stay, what are your options instead? Well, Jota in midfield, I think is fine. That's fine. Cerrillo, Jota, whatever. That's a wash for me. So I'm okay if the Cerrillo doesn't go. Nelson is a drop down. If he's out, you drop down to Jonathan Gomez, who's undoubtedly in the long run going to be amazing. But he's 16. And if Reynolds doesn't go, then Kevin, who's an 18-year-old U19 player, amateur, also starts. So those are the 3 questions. Is Quill in there campaigning? Is Quill in there? Lucci, come on. You don't need all 3 of these guys. Right? I mean, he's going to have Thomas Roberts for sure, right? Callum Montgomery for sure he'll have. He'll probably have Zobek available, right? Because they won't travel Zobek, I don't think, unless he's, do they take a 19th player? Like, who knows who they'll take? So I mean, because that's the other side of the coin too. Is like, would you rather have somebody like Reynolds over Jossie or Coleman? Or Eric Alexander? Yes. Those are your other choices that are available.
Well, what
happens if Baji's actually still hurt?
Let Eric play in the USL game. I don't care. Look, I don't give 2 squirts about the USL One championship final. I really honestly don't. I think it's a neat side project, and I think it's good for the larger overall goal of what this club should be about, which is winning the stupid MLS Cup. But now this conversation makes me think that the club treats all these things somewhat equally, and that drives me nuts. And Dan, you're being way too quiet about this.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
I'm just wondering 2 squirts of what exactly?
Whatever you want it to be. Use your imagination.
No, don't do that. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, and particularly with no Pepe as well. He would have gone on Tuesday.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah, he's not available either.
No, he's out.
Or Brazil, wherever they're doing the World Cup.
Brazil.
Okay. All right.
Well, Donzo's healthy again. He's back. He's been looking good in training. I got a report from a coach on that. He's good. Damos will be back in the middle. Coleman up front. No. I mean, yeah, you could leave Coleman, but I think at this point they'd rather have Damos than Coleman. Coleman didn't score a single game. A goal in 6 games he played with North Texas. They don't want Coleman.
Yeah, you're right.
I think Coleman will be in Seattle.
Oh, my God.
Well, are they trying to leave him?
Wait
there?
a second. So hold on a second. Hold on a second. He's not good enough to start for the USL 1 team.
Yeah.
So you're going to make him a bench player for the MLS team. Okay, shouldn't you make him start the the USL 1 game and make Damas the bench player in the MLS game if he's that much better than Coman?
You can't.
Why?
The rosters are frozen. Your rosters are frozen. The rosters froze back in.
Well, how can you move Coman back and forth then?
Because Coleman, I'm not talking about the North Texas roster. I'm talking about the FC Dallas roster. The North Texas roster, you had to submit like in right before the end of August, and there was a list on. There was like 10 FC Dallas players that they listed as available for North Texas. But in order to go play for FC Dallas, you had to have signed a contract and been listed on their roster, and Damas didn't do that. So they're out of players.
So it's a
you have to
paperwork
take either.
Okay.
Yeah, and Damas doesn't have a contract with a pro team, and Pepe did, right? That's a big difference.
Ah, that's right.
So
Okay,
you
that's
can't-
the piece in this that I'm forgetting is that Pepe did sign a professional deal. Okay, all right.
Right.
Well, it's
So you're stuck. I mean, you're out of players. You got to go with Baji, Coleman. I mean, Reynolds, Nelson. That's who you got left.
Right. And then you begin to think about the quality of all the Seattle players and the one-on-one matchups. And, is anybody giving Dallas any sort of chance of pulling something off in this game?
Not any national pundits that I've seen. I think the only way they can pull it off is if they can do what they did last time, which is grind out a 0-0 tie, and then try and steal it with a goal late or in extra time or a shootout. You know what I mean? That's basically the only chance, I think.
Yeah.
It comes back to they've only got 3 wins on the road all year, and they've only won once in Seattle ever. You know what I mean? It's just like, what are you going to do?
Go to penalties. The Seattle narrative does seem to be now, oh, hey, Roman Torres finally decided to show up again. Well, good luck, Dallas.
Yeah. Okay. So if we're all going to walk into this with the assumption that Dallas is the severe underdog and history tells us that it's very unlikely they're going to win this game, what in our minds would be a positive result from a loss on Saturday?
Single goal loss.
Like just not getting blown out?
Yeah. Yeah, keep it close, keep it tight. What we talked about before when I said one of the team to make the playoffs was the idea that, this is a young team with a bunch of young dudes who've never experienced playoffs. And so for me, even if you lose this game, it doesn't matter. There's a value to it of going on the road and having the atmosphere and having the intensity of it. You know what I mean? Because regular season MLS games are not like this one. So it's going to be different. So that's positive.
All right. So you also kicked me in the sack when you said you talked to Dan Hunt today, and you said that he essentially said to you what I was worried about, which was making the playoffs with the construction of this team this season seems to have emboldened Mr. Dan into thinking that they really are onto something here.
Yeah, it wasn't the making the playoffs part though. It was the way that the young guys had performed and been reliable. The Pamacos, the Ferreras, the Reggie Cannons, the Jesse Gonzalez, even, these young guys have become the core of their team. And he also talked about now it's time to reward them. He did mention all that part too, but I said, we had talked about the team in general, and he mentioned the young guys a bunch. And so I specifically said, does the success and the reliability of these young guys make you more convinced than ever that this is the right model? And he said, absolutely. So, I was correct that regardless of making the playoffs or not, they're now 100. If they weren't 100% before, because they probably were, now they're even more resilient in their belief that this academy to USL 1 to pro team is the way to go for them.
Wow. All right. All right. So that does lead us into the other part of the conversation because, Buzz, you were at Globe Life Park today for the introduction of the new layout for North Texas and for the XFL team. We'll get to that in a second. North Texas Soccer Club did win their semifinal game against Forward Madison. 2 goals from Pepe. Wow, that kid is a star in the making, and I'm super excited to see him in the U17 World Cup and everything else moving forward. But they play Saturday evening at Toyota Stadium in Frisco at 6 p.m. against Greenville, right?
Greenville Triumph.
Yeah, the Greenfield Triumph. What is the previous record between those two this season?
So this is actually Greenville are kind of the bogey team. They are the best away team in the league. They are the team that seems to make North Texas struggle a little. They came in twice this year, just sat in a low block, really frustrated them. This is kind of what we were talking about with John last week. We all kind of figured that Greenville would probably win, and it probably wouldn't be the best result for North Texas. But at the same time, they can't do what they did in the league against North Texas unless they're just hoping for penalties. They kind of have to step up something. So it'll be definitely interesting to see, and then all the dynamic of which North Texas team do we even get to see.
So, Buzz, is part of the problem for North Texas in that game is that they are such a young roster. What Greenville puts out there, it kind of exacerbates a byproduct of such a young team, which is you play in a low block, and now you got to figure out how to break your way in, which is something even highly veteran teams struggle to do, such as FC Dallas.
Well, this is Greenville is one of those teams coached by John Harkes. They're one of the teams that uses more veteran players. The academy, not academy teams, the MLS 2 teams, which are North Texas and Toronto so far, and there's more of them coming in, tend to use a bunch of kids. So, this is actually the kind of environment, even though it's a home game, Greenville is 5-5 on the road, basically. That's a pretty good road record. And it partially is because they're a very defensive team, as Dan said. So, this game, even if this is a typical example of what the value of USL 1 is, even if FC Dallas didn't get the result they wanted, this is still a chance for young guys to come up against a bunch of grown men and have to try and compete and have to try and break them down in a low block. So that's what makes Greenville kind of fluky, where they can beat you on the road. And if you're not 100% dialed in and focused, and you don't know how to break them down.
All right. Well, that'll be interesting. Maybe I'll actually go to that game. That'll be fun to watch, I suppose.
Just keep in mind, Greenville were the team that came to Toyota Stadium and walked away with a 4-0 win, too. It was a decimated team, but, that's what they can do.
Oh, that's
and they have
that was the game
in USL.
Has Dallas beaten them yet this season?
Yeah.
Yeah, one.
Oh, that's right. They've beaten every
1-0
team.
away.
1-0 away. And then what were the other results?
0-0 at home, and then lost 4-0 at home.
Okay. Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right.
That 4-0 loss game was that there were no MLS guys and there were no academy guys. So they were stuck with 12 just North Texas only players. Was that even the game Michelle played? Dan, I can't remember.
Oh, I think it was.
Sure was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And was he 38? So
the coach had to come in and play. Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, that game's an aberration. But, Greenville, they're here for a reason. Harkes is a good coach. Whatever you think about him off the field is up to you. So,
anybody on the Greenville team that somebody listening to the pod would know offhand by name?
Really, other than John Harkes is their coach, and then their keeper is outstanding, and their defense, they're more veterans, and they got a pretty solid defense, and they do sit in a low block and counter. So that's what you can look for.
All right. See everybody there. Fascinated to see what kind of turnout for that final they get, because right now they've been averaging south of 2,000 people. I think what did they announce? 1,200 people average this season. Is that what I read?
Yeah, I think it's something like that. And to be honest, it's not even close to that in reality. Yeah. But that's how that always is.
All right, so that turns us to this most fascinating conversation, which was today, Buzz, you attended the big reveal. Now, we've known this for a week or two, that North Texas is going to be playing their games at Globe Life Park, which is obviously now the old former Rangers, Texas Rangers baseball stadium. It's being converted into a multi-purpose facility. And here's the biggest part of this story that I still don't think most people know. They've taken the grass out of the baseball stadium and they're replacing it with turf. So North Texas Soccer will be playing their home games next season on a turf field, not grass.
Yeah, correct. It's an unlined turf field so that they can draw in whatever lines they need to for football or for a soccer. And based on the images and the design and the amount of seats they're taking out, it looks like it'll be pretty wide. They say it's going to be the same size as Toyota, so that's great.
Yeah, that is impressive. They are taking the dugout out and some stands, and they're kind of reconfiguring the stadium to make it so that it's not an NYCFC kind of situation. What most people don't know about the NYCFC Yankee Stadium situation is the reason why that field is so narrow isn't because the facility doesn't have the width. It was the one thing that the Yankees refused to give up on, which was the removal and replacement of the pitcher's mound week in and week out, and for soccer games. And at least this is what I was told initially. And because they wouldn't let them take the pitcher's mound and rebuild it when there were baseball games, it really forced them to narrow that field up even more and reconfigure the whole thing. So that's kind of one of the weird oddities about that. And it's part of the reason why, at least, take the stands and the odd angles of the viewing angles of the seats out of it, there would be a properly sized soccer field and pitch on there for North Texas.
Well, one of the things I've heard through the grapevine is it costs somewhere in the ballpark of $30,000 every time they convert that thing to a soccer stadium, which is that's an
Yankee
amazing
Stadium?
spend. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To put in real grass in the right places and not just lay some crap down there and actually really do a real conversion. But that won't be a problem at Globe Life Park because they're literally gutting out big chunks of the stands in order to fit a football stadium in there. This thing now belongs to the XFL and to North Texas. This is not going to be a baseball stadium anymore. A lot of the bad baseball conversions are because they still used for baseball, and this is not going to be the case. This is being fully converted to a football/soccer stadium.
All right, and we can start this discussion here. We can save it for another pod after the season's over. But I'm just on the record saying is I don't get this. I don't understand it. I'm assuming there is some sort of super cheap business, financial answer as to why the Hunts would choose to relocate this team into a baseball stadium and ask them to play in front of very small crowds in what is ostensibly a 45,000 seat baseball stadium. And I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean that's. I know you don't, and that's fine. It's. I don't think there's that big a difference between playing in this thing and playing in Toyota. When your target audience for USL One, look, Forward Madison averages announced 5,000 people, and they're doing crazy, amazing things in order to draw that. Everybody else in the league draws like 2,000, except for the MLS teams, which really average like 500. So the reason they're doing it is because the teams that play in the same stadium as their big team and the shadow of their big team across USL, they all average under like 1,000 people a game. More like Toronto's is like 100 people a game. It's even worse. So if you want to try and make it any kind of independent functional fan base or business, you have to get away from your MLS team. And then outside of this opportunity that fell into their laps, kind of, there really isn't anywhere else you can go, around
they could
the
play
Metroplex.
Well, there's the minor league baseball stadium in Grand Prairie.
Well, again, that's still a baseball stadium. This is being converted to where it's at least full.
Yeah, but at least it'd be a better watching experience. I mean, that's the thing that I don't get. I understand the desire to separate the brands and give it their own identity. I don't understand sticking it in this incredibly vacuumed space of a 40,000 seat baseball stadium when there are clearly other places they could play this team and again, I'm going to ultimately assume that the answer to this question is follow the money, as Bob and Dan tell me, is that the Hunts got some sort of ridiculous deal because the Rangers in the city of Arlington are so beholden to making this facility still somewhat usable and not just tearing down a 25-year-old baseball stadium.
Yeah, they wouldn't really talk specifics on the money. Dan Hunt did say that it was kind of a mutual, that they were looking for a place and Globe Life was looking for a tenant. There is sort of some involvement with the Rangers in terms of marketing. There is a component to that because obviously the Rangers are still involved with running this facility. I mean, like John Blake, who's the Rangers PR guy, ran this event today. You know what I mean? So, and it's clearly some involvement of all three teams, including the XFL. I imagine the XFL team is paying for more of the renovation than North Texas is because they're kind of an afterthought. I mean, they're trying to get this thing ready for the Renegades to kick off their season in February. So they're really moving quick. They're building these big 80-person locker rooms because that's what football teams need. They're obviously going to try and appeal to other events. I'm sure they'll probably try and put some stupid bowl game in there. Dan Hunt talked about the World Cup and how this field would be, while they'll have games at AT&T, somehow this field would be involved as like a training opportunity or something. I wasn't really clear
for
what
the World Cup. Yeah, I think not.
Well, AT&T's a turf field.
It won't be for a World Cup.
No, I know it's not for games. The idea would be that it would be involved somehow as like ancillary crowd overflow or something, or there might be a training facility for somebody to, the day before the game or something. They weren't really, I don't think at this point it was clear what their ideas were, just that it would be involved somehow. So it's clear that whoever's operating the stadium, and I think it's the Rangers in the city of Arlington, there's a commitment from the Rangers to try and help make it all work. And so that's why this is all happening. Now, remember too, though, it's only a 3-year deal. So it's not the end of the world if it's not working for you at the end. And I think in the end, they picked this venue over other venues because of the idea that they could get it tailored to what they want, which is the full size pitch equivalent to North Texas. Equivalent to Toyota Stadium.
Yeah, I like literally, if you held a gun to my head and asked me to predict what kind of turnout they end up averaging over the course of the next USL 1 season, I have no idea if they'll do better than they do in Frisco, worse, the same. I don't know. And ultimately, I guess what comes out of it isn't the real part of this involving the Hunt's commitment to actually marketing it and making something out of it? Like, you can throw the team out there, but you got to do more than just put the team in Arlington, right?
Well, you could call this a marketing effort in itself. You've got tons of people giving up season tickets right over the last few years in Tarrant County because of like, well, you don't even bother marketing to us anymore. Why should we give you money? And now they can at least say, well, you've talked about Arlington being the center of the universe and whatever because you live in Arlington or Fort Worth, so we gave you a team.
Okay, so I'm, you know what, and I guess time will tell, but I'll be fascinated to know if anybody actually knows somebody that says, oh yeah, I'll get season tickets for this.
It'll
be the same people who went to every game in Frisco.
Well, El Matador says they're coming, so for what that's worth.
Okay, but isn't the point to this to kind of grow the audience for the club in general? Yeah.
Well, one of the people that was at the event today that I got introduced to is a guy that works for the Arlington Soccer Association, for example. So, there's a City of Arlington component, there's a Rangers component, and yes, you're 100% correct. The Hunts have to take advantage of all these things, and will they? I mean, who knows? But there's definitely some. One of the things that their GM talked about, Matt Denny, was talking to me about was the idea that when you're in a separate place like this, that you can do things that you can't do in the shadow of your main team because you become the community interaction component and you get out in the neighborhood and you do like the stuff FC Dallas does now. You can't really. You're kind of the in the shadow of that stuff, and where now in Arlington. Independently, Quill mentioned this to me too, is that they're really excited, the players and the coaches are, about trying to become like the Arlington team and differentiate it and try and make something of it. So granted, that's not spending money, but hopefully when you're talking about a USL 1 team, you're talking about a team that wants to average. I mean, if they get 2,000 people, that would be a crazy, insane, amazing success story. Anything better than the 200 people they're getting now will be a positive move in the right direction. And again, 3-year deal. Like, it's not the end of the world if, I still think the long-term goal is that you and I have always talked about in this podcast, which is what didn't happen in MoneyGram, right? Like a 15 to 20 field complex with the championship stadium holding 3K, 5K. That's the dream, right? I mean, I assume it is. They haven't said that, but I'm sure that's where they're going to try and get to down the line at some point, unless all of a sudden this thing is going gangbusters or something.
Yeah, it just seemed like a no-brainer to me to go build a temporary pop-up stadium out at MoneyGram for 3,000 to 5,000 people at 3,000 people, and sell tickets to that. And I think that would be bonkers. That would be a great atmosphere. People would show up. It'd be a Dallas team. And again, there's a whole litany of things that we don't know.
Yes.
For all I know, Dan and Clark scoured the entire Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex trying to find the perfect location, and it has absolutely nothing to do with money. It actually is. This really is the only or best option. It just doesn't. It just leaves so many questions, and I'm so concerned about the ultimate fan experience. You were in there today. I mean, from the pictures that you posted, it looked like there was just a few, maybe 100 people there. I have to feel like you're sitting in a giant cavernous cave.
It is, but it didn't feel any worse than Toyota when Toyota's empty. Honestly, I mean, it's slightly worse, but it's like, the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad. I thought it just occurred to me actually is that if you, let's say you are the Hunts, and I have no idea, let's say you are, and you're trying to do something with some other facility. Let's say you're trying to get money grant to build a stadium, or let's say I'm trying to go to Keller and get the same sort of thing done. Maybe this first step is, okay, we're going to go somewhere else, and you watch us. You watch and see what we do away from FC Dallas. I bet you we do better. And this is sort of them playing their cards of, stick with me here. Watch us draw more like 1,500 here, and then now you see what we could do. Now, if you would work with us and do like a 3K stadium, then we can do blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? So maybe this is just an interim step to try and progress the thing. I don't know. That's kind of the way I feel about it.
No, interesting. Hey, did you say John Daniels was there?
The
The Rangers, John Daniels?
No, I said John Blake, the
John.
Rangers PR guy, the head of their VP of PR for the last 30 years or whatever.
Oh, okay. I wondered if there was any coincidence that Dan Hunt shaved and wore a suit today.
I imagine that's part of it. I mean, the guys that run the Renegades were there.
The XFL
TV
team.
cameras were there.
All right. Well, that's never stopped him from wearing his Sunday best before on camera. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, so Saturday's a big day for the Hunt Sports Group and FC Dallas and North Texas Soccer Club. It starts at 2:30 on FS1 when FC Dallas takes on Seattle in the opening round of the MLS playoffs. And then at 6 p.m. at Toyota Stadium, North Texas takes on Greenville and the inaugural USL 1 championship game. And the big story to watch is which players get assigned to which game. And afterwards, will we have a whole conversation about which one the Hunts decided was more important?
Yeah, we will. Yeah. One thing I should say, and just to follow up, because it popped into my head later on, was we were talking about Dan Hunt doubling down. He did also say that they had to be smart about their signings, and it did indeed take foreign signings that they couldn't yet do it 100% on kids. So I need to give him the other half of that credit of that statement because, we're not to a point where it's going to be 100% academy yet.
So he didn't.
To be fair,
but I'm gonna guess that wasn't followed by some sort of mea culpa on Giassi.
No, we didn't get into specifics. I think the Giassi bridge was burned long ago.
Yeah, I assume so. All right, so those are the big Saturday lineup for everybody, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it next week. Dan, anything else you want to throw in? You've been oddly quiet today on the pod.
Oh, there hasn't been a whole lot to talk about. It's been a very don't mind the dog.
Does your dog have fleas?
No, just a tag on a collar that makes a lot of noise. Yeah, I mean it's not been a whole lot to talk about really because it's just been the playoff game and North Texas, no FC Dallas game to summarize. So I will say,
I know there's a watching party by the club at the stadium. Is there a watching party involved with the supporters groups at all in another location?
I mean, the Dallas Beer Guardians normally have their watch party at Petty Colas. I don't know if they're doing that. I would hope that they are planning to do something with the North Texas SC game. They did last week.
Yeah.
I was in the garden. It was a lot of fun. I think, honestly, North Texas SC games are more fun than FC Dallas games anyway to watch. But to have the atmosphere and the smoke and the flags and everything else, it just made it like a really great experience that the players all loved. So I definitely hope that they will join El Matador in doing the FC Dallas watch party. I will say, hey, this is actually last week was the first game that North Texas SC actually made any money on because, North Texas SC tickets are a perk of season tickets. So everyone that stays behind to watch those games is because they've bought an FC Dallas ticket or they have an FC Dallas season ticket anyway. I don't know if that's going to carry over next year of Arlington. Maybe that will be somewhat of a financial boost for them. But it was nice to see a lot of people turning up to pay their $5 or $10 last week, and hopefully even more so do this week with tickets only $12 for a league final.
All right. Hey, Buzz, why don't you pimp your Patreon thing? I think we keep forgetting to do that, and this is probably a good time for you to shill for some dough.
Yeah, I'm not super good at the teaser for that, but we are doing fairly well on the Patreon. It is a nice way to support this podcast in particular, and then the activities we do on the Dallas Morning News, which admittedly is behind a paywall. But maybe you love this podcast, you enjoy what you get here, and there are expenses to this podcast, so hopefully you guys can all support us. And I have some goals on there that if we reach certain goals, that we can make changes in the way we cover the team and changes in the way where our news is posted, perhaps, and maybe even changes in how much we can cover the team if we reach certain thresholds. So it's going great. It's a right step in the right direction. And if you do the Patreon, you get bonus content that nobody else gets on the Patreon page. So a little teaser there. Pay the man.
The link to the Patreon, I believe, is in the Third Degree Twitter bio, by the way, too, is it not?
Yeah, it's just patreon.com/Third Degree. It's pretty easy to find. It's not particularly hard.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
yeah.
All right, so Saturday's a big day. We will discuss it in great detail next week. Thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We will speak to you on another edition of Third Degree, the podcast.
Tono Tussman.